ACP, Activist Community Podcast Network, reports on issues and concerns affecting local and global communities. If you'd like to talk about current issues in Albuquerque or New Mexico, or if you represent an activist group and want to further your cause or promote your group's events, email or call Tom Den at tnldent4@msn.com or call 505-450-1268. We promote progressive grassroots efforts to lift all people and communities to a place of equality, respect, compassion, and care.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Activist Community Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Dent. We're broadcasting from the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice that we do second and fourth Thursday of every month at 1 to 3 o'clock. My guest today is Jim Harvey, who is the new permanent executive director of the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. I know that Jim has come from Chicago, where he did student organizing. He's lived in Washington, and he's moved out to Albuquerque for about the last 9 years, and he is the president of the board of the African American Performing Arts Center. Jim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Tom, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and share with you today. Joining the Center for Peace and Justice is quite an honor for me because in a lot of ways it just brings me full circle to my long history of activism in civil rights, human rights, and so many things that are associated with that, anti-war activism down through the years. And so being here at what I would like to consider the nerve center of so much of the work that needs to be done and that is being done in Albuquerque and around the area is just a great opportunity for me.
Well, thank you. We welcome you here. And from what I've heard comparatively around the country, there's a couple of fantastic peace centers, peace and justice centers. I've heard that the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice is definitely one of the better ones in the country. And we've done a lot of great work and had some incredible activists come through here. And this place set up by Sally Alice Thompson and her husband Donald, setting up Veterans for Peace. And we've been here for, I guess, over 33 years, probably more than that. So you originally came from Chicago. Do you want to back up and start telling us a little bit about your involvement with SNCC and student activism there?
Sure. I joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, commonly known as SNCC, back in early 1963 when I was actually still just a high schooler in Chicago. And I was really taken by the great work that was being done at that time. Of course, so much of it was centered around something that to this day is still really important. That is voter registration, voter education, making certain that African Americans in particular throughout the South really got the opportunity to register and vote and have their voices heard. So that's where SNCC was actually spending a lot of its effort in its early days. Of course, as anybody who knows has paid attention to the history of the civil rights struggle, there were just so many other things that had to happen, and that SNCC found itself in addressing as time went on. But as we look at what's happening today, voter registration is once again a big issue because we're fighting voter suppression in a lot of places in the country. And with the election coming up in November, that's going to be an extremely important activity that we engage in right now. And make certain that all those people who are being shut out of the voting process are in fact brought into it and given the opportunity once again to participate in electoral politics the way they need to. SNCC over the years, of course, evolved and began addressing so many other issues, and not just in the South, but all over the United States, and even became a very active voice in the anti-war movement at the height of the Vietnam War. So once again, I was given the honor of becoming the national co-chair of a group that was a spinoff of SNCC called the National Black Anti-War Anti-Draft Union. And we spent a lot of time traveling not just around the country, educating people around the fact that as African Americans in this country, continuing with the battle of civil rights, that we had no place in the war in Vietnam, and that we had no argument and no quarrel with the people of Vietnam. And because of those two things alone, I found myself traveling around the world and speaking on behalf of African Americans in the United States that had raised their voices in protest against the war in Vietnam. So that became just another level of activism for me, and the lessons I learned and the people that I came in contact with, both here in the U.S. and around the world, have stuck with me to this very day. And so I'm an avowed activist and proud to be an activist, and can't do anything about it but just continue to be an activist.
So you lived in Washington, D.C. for a while. Was that in your role as head of that organization?
No, that was all in Chicago, and actually I moved to Washington, D.C. in 1969 and began to work with a group that the late Marion Barry started called Pride Incorporated, which to this day remains the kind of model, I think, for community organizing and for raising people up from challenges of poverty and lack of educational opportunities. And Pride Incorporated brought people in and provided them with training and a lot of job aspects, and then got them out into the community so that they could take those skills and put them to work, not just to earn an honest and decent living, but to also bring important service to the communities where they worked.
Well, it sounds like you have a very impressive portfolio for organizing activism and work in nonprofit organizations. Looks like you're exactly what we're looking for and what we need here in Albuquerque. What did bring you out to Albuquerque, and how long have you been here?
Been here now almost 9 years, and my one-word answer for what brought me to Albuquerque was weather. I had moved back to Chicago actually in 2008, basically to help my aging and very sick and sadly dying parents. And so I was there with them for 4 years, and I stuck it out through the snowstorms that are typical in Chicago, and that, having been away from Chicago for so many years, I'd forgotten what it was like. But finally, the blizzard of 2011 into 2012 spoke to me in ways that I had never imagined. And as soon as I was able to find another place to live, I just packed up and headed west. And I'm glad I landed in Albuquerque.
Great. Yeah, I kind of had the same experience when I was in high school in 72. They woke me up at 3 o'clock at night and told me to go out and play in the hockey rink, and it was like negative 23 degrees, and you're supposed to do it in a way where the water planed and never went against the wind, and this huge windstorm came along and blew all the water on me, and I almost turned into an icicle, and I said, I am moving to where it's warm and never looking back. And I've been involved with the Peace Center and worked on the coordinating committee here since about 2010, 2011. I love the work we do. We've had some ups and downs and different changes, and we're you probably feel the same way I do. We want to get everything from the past, put it together, get people working together, moving forward into the future. What's your initial impression so far of the Peace Center, and how do you feel about working here?
You know, it hasn't been 2 weeks, you know, that I've been on this job, but I've probably spent the lion's share of my time each and every day meeting people that have been involved with the Peace Center for long times, you know, anywhere from 2 years to 30 years in some instances. And the conversations that I have with the folks that I've talked to, and I've been talking to a lot of folks, the conversations I've had tell me that the level of commitment and determination that is a result of people's involvements in the Peace Center and the issues that are addressed here tells me that this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm really encouraged and buoyed even in you know, the work that's been done here historically. You know, I remember coming here the day that the guy in the White House, as I refer to him, you know, stole the election and the impact that it had on these communities. And I came here and walked into an overcrowded room of people that all felt the same way. And that was that over the next 4 years, we had to do everything we possibly could to stand against the kind of tyranny that this man has exacted on us. And, you know, that commitment continues to keep us together here, I think. And, you know, I'm just looking forward to being a part, you know, of the struggle as we go forward.
Yeah. We definitely have to work we definitely have our work cut out for us, especially with the type of, what's the word for it? Communications, ignorance that the current administration is spewing across the world and endorsing across the world, like endorsing dictator-like governments or out-and-out dictators, and trying to claim that climate change and global warming is a hoax, but we're all going to be suffering greatly, not only health-wise, but climate-wise, tornado-wise, fire, hurricane-wise, unless we start working on this and start working on it now, or as Greta says, we should have been working on it yesterday. And this is not breaking news, but it has to be breaking news all the time.
You're absolutely right, Tom. You know, these are not new issues, but they're issues that if we don't do something about them soon, we're going to end up paying for our neglect. And so, again, I'm just glad that there are, you know, conscious people out here, you know, like yourself and like so many of the people that I've met here at the Peace and Justice Center that are continuing to work on these issues. And, you know, we've just got to raise our voices and reach others and teach others and get people engaged and keep people engaged.
Well, with your activities so far in Albuquerque, what's your general impression of the town, and what do you see as some of the problems and pluses as we move forward?
That's a loaded question. There's something very special about people in Albuquerque. You know, I mean, I think that, you know, values and individual outlooks on how we live our lives, you know, puts us in very special kinds of positions and sort of defines our relationships with one another. And, you know, we know that there are large groups of people that basically come here, you know, looking for some peace and quiet. But, you know, we also know that there can't be any peace and quiet as long as all of us are being assaulted by, you know, this administration and the things that are going on. So I think more and more people are waking up to the realities of our existence here in Albuquerque. You know, this town has a long history of challenges, you know, injustice, you know, at lots of levels, you know, environmental problems and problems with the police department and problems with business encroachment and housing issues and employment issues. And those are all issues that affect all of us. So whether we came here just to sit down and be quiet, or whether we came here, to make a better life, a life for ourselves, those things are still here. And, my message to everybody that I've met here at the Peace and Justice Center is we know what the problems are, and the only way we're going to solve them is we solve them together.
Great. That sounds good. I'm excited. I hope you're very excited. I know that we do face our challenges. There's a small, growing, determined group of activists on police issues, on environmental issues, on a number of issues. And we know most people that are listening to this podcast know the challenges that New Mexico and Albuquerque face. We've been down at the bottom in a number of different categories, and it's all cyclic, it's all holistic. We got to heal ourselves from the bottom up and work together and organize to make this a better community. And as Lloyd and I say, and a lot of people I talk to say, well, if you can change Albuquerque for the better, you can change the world.
I completely agree with that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for being with us today.
Sure thing, and thank you.
Welcome aboard.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.